Morning everybody, Metalhead here, hope you're going well. I'm just at Bond Street Station to get on the Elizabeth line for the second time in under 7 days. Yes, I thought to myself, where could I go today where somebody famous is buried? I looked at my maps, I realized there was a dot not far from South Hall, and this is the grave of the famous Tony Hancock, comedian, actor, who passed away quite young of suicide in my country of birth, Australia. But his ashes were taken back from Australia by a famous British comedian and buried in West London. So we're going to go on the Elizabeth line out. I've done a wrong turn off here. So let's go. I spent a lot of time in Bond Street last year because I'd get off here as my work was in Oxford Circus. So this station is really familiar to me, but I've never ever gotten on the Elizabeth line here. I've even got like a new microphone. I'm just gonna pull that out right now. So that like the quality might be different without it or with it. So I'll put it to good use. I was actually gonna use this on an action camera, but the jack was the wrong size. But then I thought, wait, if I'm using an old iPhone 6 for vlogging until I get a new camera, which is on the way, a Sony one, I thought maybe I could stick a microphone in the jack and then everything should be better. Alrighty, all aboard the Elizabeth line to South Hall. As you can see, I'm in South Hall. That writing down there, that's Punjab. This is like a little Punjabi in West London because South Hall has a majority of migration from the Punjab region of India and Pakistan. Same goes with Smethwick, that's a large Punjab region, and even also in Vancouver in Canada, where Punjabs have settled. So I'm gonna do a hack like I usually do when I come here. I get myself a free meal from the Sikh temple across the road from the train station, just over there at the Gurdwara, if I'm saying that right. It's open from like what, 9 o'clock until 8 o'clock at night, and everybody's welcome. Just take off your shoes and wear a bandana. That's like the biggest Gurdwara they have here in South Hall. I've seen much larger in Gravesend in Kent, where you can actually find the largest Gurdwara in Europe or outside of South Asia. Just heading off to Gurdwara Sri Guru Singh Sabha. Yes. When I first moved to Britain in July 2015, I went to Gravesend for the day. A little bit of a personal matter on that side. But when I was in Gravesend, I actually found out that A, Pocahontas had died there, and B, the largest Sikh temple was located in Gravesend. And as a matter of fact, former Prime Minister David Cameron has gone to that Gurdwara and served food. Just put on a bandana and did his job. So today, on the menu, it's always going to be the same food. It's always like chapatis, there is a yogurt, there's a rice sweet thing, then there is it's like a pumpkin curry, I always believe, served with water and chai tea, chai masala. So let's go in. Always remember, shoes off and bandana on. Action. I just had my free lunch at the Gurdwara. I'm not taking the piss by coming here just for a free lunch. I just think that to come to a Sikh temple for food is got to be a cultural enrichment in your life, no matter what your background is. So, yes, do go to a Sikh temple, do put on that turban, do wash your hands, do enjoy some of that delicious vegetarian food, and do like listen to the nice music they are playing, and listen into, you know, what they're talking about. It gives a bit of an enlightenment to you, no matter what your background is. Anyway, let's continue this vlog. Now, I'm gonna do a bit of a long walk to Hillington. I could have just gotten off the tube at Hillington, but I thought, wait, if I just come to the Sikh temple for some food and then do a bit of a walk, I've got the goodness of food and I get the exercise done. So I'm gonna walk to Hillington, as it's gonna be like 2 miles to get to the tiny cemetery where Tony Hancock is buried. But at least it's not raining yet. If it was raining today, I wouldn't have came here. But it's clouding over, it doesn't bother me. But I know is that I'm gonna get this vlog done today. So as I'm walking to Hillington today from Southall, let's do a bit of a read up on my iPhone on Find a Grave about the life of Tony Hancock. He was born the 12th of May 1924 at Hall Green, Metropolitan Borough of Birmingham in the West Midlands. So he was actually a Brummie. And as a matter of fact, there's a small statue of him in Birmingham with his bowler's hat and his cup of coffee. That's his most iconic photograph. He died on the 25th of June 1968 at Beauville Hill in Wallara in the heart of the Sydney CBD. So he died not far from where all the main attractions are in Sydney, Australia. And he is buried at St Dunstan with Holy Angels Churchyard in Cranford, London Borough of Hounslow in Greater London. Or as I would probably say, West London. Entertainer. He was an immensely popular British comedian who had a loyal fan following and is credited with being the highest paid British comedian of his time. Born Anthony John Tony Hancock, was one of 3 children. He was an 11-year-old when his father Jack Hancock died of lung cancer. After leaving school without graduating, Hancock attempted stand-up comedy at 16. He made his first radio broadcast in 1941 during World War II. He served as ground crew in the Royal Air Force after being discharged in 1942. Worked with Ralph Reed, a gang show. After the war, he had a job as a comedian in the Windmill Theatre. Radio bookings were offered to him more and more by 1949. In 1953, he became the resident comedian on radio's All-Star Bill, working for the first time with comedy writers Ray Galton and Alan Simpson. The first radio series of Hancock's Half an Hour began in 1954, featuring a cast that included Sid James, Hattie Jacks, and Kenneth William. In 1956, Hancock moved to television for 3 years with the legendary Hancock Half Hour series. This series, a newly developed situation comedy, included classic sketches such as The Blood Donor. His career faded after breaking with his long-term colleagues. In 1963, he appeared in the 30-minute series Hancocks, which was not well received and cancelled. After collapsing in January of 1967, his health seriously declined from chronic alcohol abuse. In 1968, he was under contract for a 13-episode Australian television series called Hancock Down Under. He finished only 3 of the 13 episodes before he ended his life with suicide, with a combination of alcohol and pills. Things just seemed to go too wrong too many times. During his career, he appeared in minor roles in 5 films. His cremated remains were returned to England. Eventually, his ashes were buried with his mother, whom died the next year. He was married and divorced. His 2008 biography, Tony Hancock, definitive biography, was written by John Fisher. His birthplace home is adorned with a commemorative plaque. In 1996, a memorial was dedicated to Tony Hancock in Old Square in Birmingham. In 2002, BBC poll, he was voted the best comedian ever. So, he's buried with his mother, but his father, John Hancock, is actually buried in just see if we check this out and find a grave. Buried in Bournemouth. I'm like, weird. It's like, you know, Tony Hancock was born in Birmingham, but his father died and is buried in Bournemouth. Just, that's a bit strange. But another interesting thing that says on Find a Grave was his spouse was Cecilia Romanis, and she died in 1969, like a year after he died. And I don't know the circumstances from her death, but it still seems tragic how, you know, she separated from Tony because, you know, I guess he was a bit of an alcoholic, pardon the pun, but she passed away not too long after Tony did. The comedian Willie Rushton was living in Australia at the time of Tony Hancock's passing. He collected his ashes and returned them to London, where he was buried in a cemetery in West London, because less than a year later his mother would actually pass away and be buried next to him. I'm not too sure about where his wife is buried, but she's probably buried somewhere else. As I'm walking through to Hillington, I had no idea that there'd be many people living in houseboats. I saw one boat back there, but then here's at least 6 of them. I used to work with a guy who lived in a houseboat with his Italian girlfriend. I thought, man, what a life to live in a houseboat. And as a matter of fact, houseboats are so much cheaper than properties. You could probably just buy a houseboat for like a 5-figure sum and just, you know, sell it all around Britain. But then, of course, you have to pay mooring fees and all that. When I first came to Birmingham, I saw all these houseboats on the canal. I said, this isn't used as a public transport matter? And the guy said, no, unfortunately not. I used to think that these canals in Birmingham you could easily transfer by ferry, but that's not the way they do it these days. Yes, this is what we call an underpass. I think you guys call it the same thing in America. Overfly. So this park area is split into two, with some roads and properties. The church that Tony is buried at is right here. So if I go under this pathway, I'll get there in no time. Let's see, we've got high footpath. I've gone through there. Maybe the church is through here. Probably go this way. And this path is part of the Hillington Trail. Hillington, not Hillington, Hillington. Church is right there. Gate is here. All they need to do now is get inside. This is the main entrance to the churchyard. I can remember from photographs that Tony is buried in a wall niche. It's still considered his grave because, well, that's where his human remains are buried. But you could also use the term crematorial niche. It's not like his ashes are scattered in the ground and there's just a plaque to basically say his ashes are scattered there. That's the case in Golders Green. Rex in Harrison. No, that's not the American one we're talking about. Although I did visit Rex Harrison's widow's grave this week. Really small churchyard, really tiny location. That's also a public footpath. We'll swing around here. Maybe I'll look onto this area right here. Don't mind my white shoes getting muddy and wet. I bought them for $10 at Primark. Nice to see that there's a Commonwealth War grave that's maintained by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission. A sailor. Now, if anybody who lives in this area of Hillingdon or Cranford, can you explain why it says like the Grove of Hillingdon, formerly Cranford? Like, am I in Cranford or am I in Hillingdon? Either way, I just believe I'm in Hayes. Okay. Let's try to find where Tony is buried. I know he's buried in a wall niche. Right here. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong location. Now Tony should be buried in a crematorium wall niche just like this with a topper on. That's what I found on Find the Grave. So gotta go look around. If I look that way, no sighting. Maybe if I look down this way, I will find it. I have a feeling that spring is coming early. As the trees are blooming right now. This is such a really nice cemetery. I don't want to compare it to others, but I've never been to a cemetery that has so many wall niches. It's like they want to put the usage to people having their cremated remains in a wall rather than in the ground. I guess it saves space. I think I'm quite getting close. Normally the famous graves always have the most amount of flowers, but that's not always the case. But here it is. In memory of Tony Hancock, born the 12th of May 1924 in Birmingham, died the 25th of June 1968 in Sydney, Australia, and his mother, Lucille Lillian Sennett, born 1890 on the 4th of September, died the 8th of November 1969. So Tony's and his mother's passing were at least a year apart. So his mother would have been 79 when she passed away, and so Tony was 44, I believe, when he passed on. So it's good that he was buried here in Britain and not Australia. But then again, there are many, British immigrants who are buried in Australia. You gotta think about the time that in the 1960s, to take a body back from Australia to London would be quite expensive. But to take a simple urn from Sydney to London was a simple task for a British comedian. And so Tony rests here in Hillingdon, or Cranbrook, whatever you want to call it. A very nice part. You just go through the gate over there, you follow the fence line, and then you come around here where the great man is buried.